Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to be looking at Torah Kuf Nun Hey in Likkutei Moharan Chelik Aleph. Now, Kuf Nun Hey is Osios Kana, is Osios of Kona, a language of acquiring something. And it's specifically Avram Avinu who comes along and refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Koine HaKol. As Koine HaKol, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu acquires everything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything, the source of everything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us everything, and He's Koine HaKol. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Koine HaKol, that specifically comes about by way of Avram Avinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't be referred to as Koine HaKol, as He who acquires all things, if it were not for Avram Avinu. So the Torah that's going to discuss a nakuda of Avram Avinu and what Avram Avinu is searching for is in Torah Kuf Nun Hey, and the remez is that it's Kana, Kel Kana. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who acquires. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who acquires and owns the world. Das is Kinyan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the shirish of Das. Das that we have comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Da kanisa ma chasarta. If you have Das, you've acquired everything. Da lo kanisa, da chasarta ma kanisa. If you don't have Das, then you have no acquisition. Acquisition, Das, the nakuda of Pnimius Hadas, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu brings down to us and what all of the tzaddikim bring down, beginning with Avram Avinu, is why we're going to see in this Torah, it's the Osios of Kuf Nun Hey. Zok the Heilige Rebbe. Atzvus humida ra'a ma'od. Atzvus humida ra'a ma'od. Sadness, despondency is a very negative trait. That's what it reads. Sadness is a very negative trait. Obviously, sadness does not mean clinical depression, God forbid. Clinical depression is a psychiatric condition of the mind that influences the emotional space and the physiological lived life of an individual to a very intense degree, but that's a sickness of the body. That's something that needs to be dealt with and cured from the physiological level prior to referring to it as an emotion that needs to be grappled with. To say that atzvus over here refers to a clinical form of depression would be a destructive and dangerous idea. But atzvus is the midah of a melancholic outlook, a pessimism, a tendency towards sadness, a natural proclivity towards not being in control of my ability to find joy in my life. That's a very negative midah. Umasha ha'adam eino nosa lahatzadik. And what is it that keeps a person away from the tzaddik? What is it that keeps a person away from the writings of the tzaddik, from the face of the tzaddik, from the awareness of a tzaddik, from the connection to the tzaddik within ourselves, to the belief that there's goodness? What prevents a person? Hu machmas atzvus v'kvedus. Generally speaking, the two elements that drag a person downwards and prevent them from being proactive about their spiritual life are sadness and the heaviness that comes along with it. Sadness and the heaviness that comes along with it. V'chein masha eno mispal karoi. And furthermore, the inability to pray properly, meaning to say a feeling of disconnection with our prayer. The chiddush about prayer is that if we're doing it already, it might as well be the most significant thing in the world. Because if a person has already gone into the lip service of prayer, they stand face to face with the opportunity to get it right in this moment and to validate every element of their existence, one moment of authentic prayer. Yet we miss it and then we look back on it and say, oh, we treated prayer like any other human condition. But the thing that blocks us is sadness. Sadness prevents me from davening properly. Umachmas atzvus va'atzlus. And now Rabbeinu shifts from sadness and heaviness to the natural outgrowth, psychologically speaking, of the heaviness of the body and the soul, which expresses itself as a certain form of laziness, a certain form of inactivity, of immobility, of not moving, of an abandonment of life to the natural proclivity of the self. Hanu machmas chisaron emuna. So now Rabbi Nachman is giving us, he says, sadness is what causes difficulty. And it's what causes heaviness, and it what causes inactivity. And then Rabbi Nachman goes, and this is how he operates, of showing the cause of the cause, showing the cause of the symptom until we can get back to the highest place and fix it in its root. So he says, you want to know where it really comes from? It comes from a chisaron and emuna. So sadness causes these things, and what sadness emerges from is a certain deficiency within the shape of our faith, the shape in which we embrace faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the source of sadness. Ki bevadai, im hayalo emuna shlema. If the person, in accordance with their own posture, had full and complete faith in accordance with what they're capable of doing, vayama'amin sh'Hashem yisbarach oimed alav v'shomeya kol dibor v'dibor sheyotze mipiv. And this person believed authentically, with all of the pretending inherent within it, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is standing there, so to speak, as is brought down the halacha, listening and hearing each and every dibor, that exits my mouth, uma'azin l'kol tfilasenu, and bends his ear, so to speak, to the voice of our tefillah, meaning not only the words of our tefillah, but the unuttered intentions of our tefillah that we can't even muster the strength to say, if we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu heard all of that. So bevadai hayam mispal karoi. Most certainly I would take the opportunity to daven properly. I would most certainly take the opportunity to daven properly if I believed that in this moment right now, everything is here and I can encounter HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But as a result of the lack of my faith, I fall into a loss of a sight of the significance, and that's where the sadness comes from. Ach ikar bilbul hatfila. What is the essential confusion that causes us to miss the point of tefillah? Huba machmes chisaron ha'emuna. The main source of it is that it emerges, it's a symptom of a deficiency in our faith. It's not necessarily a lack of faith. It's a deficiency in faith. It's not a quantitative question of more faith. It's rather a hole within the edifice of faith that blocks faith from doing the miraculous work that it actually does. People think that if there's a problem with emunah, then they have to have more emunah, meaning to say, believe more. And there's always the possibility of extending the framework and application of our emunah. But the chisaron in emunah is almost like a hole at the bottom of a ship, meaning to say that the ship is simply not going to move as long as there's that hole in it. It's not going to make it. And if there's a chisaron in the emunah, I don't have the right way of looking at emunah, so then that's going to give birth to sadness. As a result of a person not having the proper orientation and framing of their faith, they fall into a laziness which likely borders along a certain form of procrastination, which is more symptomatic of anxiety than not wanting to do something, a certain paralysis of heaviness, and a sadness that comes about as a result of that. And it's mebalbel my tefillah, and it blocks me from being able to do anything. Ki ikar ha'atzlus v'ha'atzlus, and you see Rabbeinu is switching back and forth. What comes first? Atzlus, 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 atzlus. Because, it's like, what causes the symptom? I eat because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because I eat. It's ultimately a cyclical, system of repetition until a person breaks free from it. And so, ki ikar ha'atzlus v'ha'atzlus, the essential essence, the main part of atzlus and atzlus, humachmas chisaron ha'emunah, is the result of the deficiency in my faith. Kamol l'mashal, for example, by way of metaphor, keshemanichem chita be'eretz tova, when you leave good grain, good wheat, in a good land, on a good field, azayhu gadol v'tzameach yafa, if it's surrounded and rooted properly, so then that is going to grow beautifully. And if it's firmly planted in the ground, if it's planted properly, if the basis upon which that growth rests is sturdy, so then no wind and no storm and no force is going to come and move it. And this is because that when it comes to vegetation and when it comes to growth, the connectivity between the outgrowth from the ground and the ground itself is rooted in the power of tsemeach, the power of growth, an inherent and integral connectivity between the source and the outgrowth, which is the point at which the source gives birth to the outgrowth. And even though you're moving away from the source, you're by the outgrowth now, nevertheless, you could still see the outgrowth as being part and parcel of the source. That's why Zra'im is emunah, because you're separating from the source and the outgrowth, but you have the emunah that it's one and the same. And so as long as it's planted firmly, it has this power of growth, which is the koyach hagoydel, which is something that is perpetually moving it to move upwards. Al kain eino mazik lo shum davar. There's nothing in the world, no external circumstance that is going to come and uproot this plant because it's firmly rooted. Aval kishenosnim hachita be'eretz she'eno tova lizriya. But when this plant is planted in a place that is not worthy or not ra'ui or not hospitable to actual growth, and the circumstances and the macro and micro systems that impose themselves on a person's life are not systematically built in a good way, azayhu nirkav ba'aretz, then it's going to rot into the ground. Why? Because it lacks that inherent connection and the potentiation and the possibility of growth, which is nothing but the connection between the source and the outgrowth. That power that comes from the source itself is what gives it strength to grow. And so the mashal is the emuna is the bechina of the koyach hagoydel v'koyach hatzomeach. A yid in this world, the only way that a neshama in this world, which is by definition removed, at least consciously, from its source, so we already find ourselves in a state of detachment. The only way for a person who's already in a place of detachment to find some semblance of stability is to connect themselves firmly to the source of where their growth is going to come from. And it's not a growth that comes from within themselves, because the outgrowth has no power to itself. The moment it thinks it has power to itself, it's cut itself from the source. In truth, it's identifying and being mavatel ourselves to the source of our power, which continuously is giving shape to our lives, which is emuna. Emuna hi bechinas koyach hagoydel v'koyach hatzomeach. When I tap into faith, when I access this place of emuna, somehow, some way, I am attached to the infinite light that is descending down through existence, which is pushing all things to grow beyond themselves. Emuna is the key that opens the lock. Emuna is not only a way of thinking. It's not postulates that we conceive of about our faith or 13 principles of faith. It's that also. But as Rabbi Nachman points out, Emuna is a segula. When I have Emuna, I unlock something in my mind that through the segula of Emuna and the bittul called Emuna, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mashpia from above, down below, from a world of Emuna. He's mashpia down below the light that emerges from Emuna. Emunah is the most potent element in existence. It's the only element in existence. It's that which is. It's our capacity to see that which is and draw down the ultimate meaning, which is the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Emunah, as Rabbi Nachman says in Torah and Likkutei Moharan Tinyana, is very much connected to the medame, to imagination, because both of them are fundamentally rooted upon something that cannot be proven. When a person is tapped into Emunah, the absolute demand for meaningfulness in each and every moment of conscious awareness, rooted in the fact that Emunah is something that cannot be proven nor disproven. Therefore, it is ultimately, like David HaMelech said, a choice that one must make perpetually. Derech Emunah bacharti, umitzvasecha shivisi. I have chosen faith. I have chosen it. I choose to live in accordance with this principle. This is what gives shape to the human experience. This is what allows it to grow and feel that it's okay, whatever it's going through and whatever is happening. Kamosha Kosev, like the pasuk says, Vayihi oimein es hadasa. The word in the Megillah, oimein, which means kind of cultivating and helping develop, is the same language as emuna. So we see that emuna is a lashon of gidul. It's a process of growth. Emuna is the ground upon which we plant ourselves and from which we grow naturally. As Chazal have told us, emuna zeh seder zra'im. When it comes to Shas, when it comes to the Sisla Shidrei Mishnah, Chazal give a siman to it, Zman Nakat. It's dealing with time, dealing with broke down reality. And the first thing that we do is we encounter Zra'im, which is Brachos L'Rosh Tzadik, which is Osios Bo Keser, and we enter into the place of Zra'im, of planting. Planting is an act of theoretical self-destruction, because I take my seed and I throw it away, I disconnect it from the source, I disown it, I allow it to move beyond the freedom and the control of my mind and go to a place beyond my control, which is an act of destruction. But within that very act of destruction, I am fundamentally aware and operating within the belief that this act of destruction and the ultimate decomposition of that seed will not only not lead to destruction, but it will lead to a revelation of more than I could have ever imagined. That's why Zriya is always makusher to Emunah, because it's first and foremost an act of self-abandonment. I am letting go of control, and therefore I am entering into a place where I no longer have any idea about what's going to happen. I've relinquished the all too human need for control, and the only thing left is what's going to be revealed as Emunah. That's the secret of Zra'im. That's the secret of Zra'im. That's why Shas starts with Zra'im. V'al kishiyesh la'amuna, when a person has Emunah, which is this force, this gravitational pull that connects all things to their source, as Rabbi Nachman describes elsewhere with regards to Emunah, which is the aspect of the koyach hagoydel, the koyach hatzemeach, the element of growth orientation and the perpetual movement towards a purpose that exists within each and everything. Azay ein mazik lo shum davar. Nothing can destroy me. Nothing can damage me. Things can bother me. Things can hurt me. Things can cause me to undergo processes, but nothing can destroy me. Nothing can damage me. I can't be broken because I'm a kusher to Emunah. Ve'eno yira mishum adam v'shum davar. And I'm not afraid of anybody or anything. I'm afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm mevata myself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not to any person, not to anything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'chvaydoi uva'atzmo. Nothing else, no malach, no sar, no nothing. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When a person is makusha to Amunah, the shigaon of Amunah, the eating of the tainted wheat and marking our foreheads of knowing that all we can eat is Amunah, so we live a powerful life of being melech in our world. We're king because I'm with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have Amunah. Nothing can knock me down. Enu yira mishum adam v'shum davar. Zahirus is important, always and forever, but fear is not necessary. Umispalul b'chayus karoi, and a person davens because a person realizes HaKadosh Baruch Hu is standing right in front of me. And if I'm going to daven on Yom Kippur at Ne'ilah or in a moment of pain or a moment of great joy, then I can daven right here, right now. If I've ever been able to daven before in my life, or I ever conceive of a moment where I'll be able to daven, then that same logic should open up for me the gate of tefillah to reveal to me that right here, right now is all that exists. V'noisa l'tzadik, and a person gets up off of their couch and they go to see the tzaddik achai. They go, they connect, they open the book, they believe once again. They don't allow their minds to meander into the natural tendency of that self-loathing and anxiety where a person is not mechazik, because that's the human tendency to want to go into those worries. At least a person feels something there. But to be mitchazik and to push a person's self to connect once again to the nukud of the tzaddik, this is what happens through Amunah. Nothing scares me. I live with the ultimate truth. That's the deepest possible thing that can ever emerge from anything is the secret of Amunah. There's no substance, there's no object, there's no experience, there's no book, there's nothing that can provide something deeper than what we already fundamentally know, which is derech Amunah b'charti. That I have the choice to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this moment. I'm not afraid of anything. Aval kishiyesh chisaron be'emunah, but when I think that emunah is more about what I particularly think right now, or how I think about what I'm thinking, or all of the fallen forms of emunah that we've received, or the misconstruals of emunah that we think it means, when there's a chisaron in emunah, then a person, they might even be growing exponentially, but they're not growing based on the essential source of life that is pulsating through them at every single moment. You could have a person who makes even the slightest step towards change in their life, and a person who flies from planet to planet on levels of exposure, v'chule, v'chule. And one person's hatzlacha can be based on circumstance and can be based on the territory that they've carved for themselves, while the other person in the tiny growth that they made is rooted in the koyach hagoydel and the koyach hatzomeach. Well, that person who grows based on the koyach hagoydel and koyach hatzomeach of emunah kolzos is growing far greater and far more fundamentally than the other person. When a person is connected to emunah, when a person is not connected to emunah, azahu nirkov mamish. Person can have everything in the world, but they don't feel rooted. Like that seed that's planted in the wrong place. And a person then becomes sad, and they fall into inactivity because nothing has borne fruit, which bears more inactivity, and kvedus, and a heaviness, which is the imposition of impossibility upon the ability to get up. So I keep myself stuck. Why? Because I'm stuck. Why? Because I'm stuck. Why? Because I'm stuck. Who said? I said. And a person slowly but surely decays. How many plants decay because the plant is assuming that there's something wrong with it and is trying to change every element of the plant or every detail of the plant, when all along, as Rabbeinu is pointing out, the only thing that needs to be checked is the emunah, is the rootedness that that person is experiencing. And here, again, an Avram Avinu is the bechina of the Av HaEmunah, and the tachlis of the Av HaEmunah is the bechina of emunah in Eretz Yisrael. There's the shirish of Amunah, and there's the expression of Amunah down here in the dirt of it all, in the dust of it all, in the makom hatzimtzum mamish, in the chalal hapanu that is the land of Eretz Yisrael, which each and every person gets to carry within their hearts when we say libi chalal b'kirbi. Each and every person has Eretz Yisrael, the emptiness of the void, the lowest place imaginable, where God's presence is so concealed that I have to mamish tap into Amunah with Mesiras Nefesh in every second. And that becomes the apex. This is where Avram Avinu is going. First thing is identifying the source of Emunah, and then the next thing is towards Eretz Yisrael, Lech Lecha. And again, like I said today in the name of the Bas Ayin says, Lech Lecha is Lech Lechaf HaDimyon. Go to the Chaf HaDimyon, go into imagination. That's the process, Avram Avinu. And as Rabbeinu says, imagination and faith are one and the same. And Eretz Yisrael is also the place of imagination. That Kol Misha Dar Eretz Yisrael, Doim Eloi Sheyesh Le'Elokai. Is that Tzaddikim say what? In Chutz La'aretz there's no God? God is everywhere. God is everything. Avada God is present in Chutz La'aretz as he is in Eretz Yisrael. So what's the difference? In Eretz Yisrael, your Dimyon is also Mezuchach. Your dreams and your prophecies are also real. And so this is the apex. This is where he wants to go. When a person is able to connect themselves to Emunah in the proper way, and so that they undo the frustration and the sadness and the inattention and the inactivity and the fallen nature of prayer, they enter into the aspect of Erech Apayim, patience, a deep breath. Avad, it's the midah of Rachamim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but those Yid Gilgul midos of Rachamim are for us to try and copy. Mahu Afata, the secret of Dimyon. Mahu Afata, to imitate HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol, like a monkey imitates a human being. As the Zohar Kadosh says, that Nishmas Yisrael is like a koif b'fnei Ashchina. And Kuli Alma kekoif b'fnei Nishmas Yisrael. V'chule v'chule. And every Navi is a koif in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. Patience, it means patience, imitating the patience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Drawing down faith to get rid of the sadness and the despondency and the disrootedness and the unrootedness. Breaking free from that is Erech HaPayim, patience. Masha'enu yerem meshum davar. What is patience? I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not going to miss anything. I'm not late. I'm not early. I'm here right now. Things are under control. I know I don't have control, but I've acknowledged I don't have control, and therefore there's a calmness that descends upon me because what is right in front of me is what's happening. And this is the Metzias, and all I have to do is tune in. All I have to do is turn on my emunah. What is there to be afraid of? What am I to be afraid of? And fear is the source of anger. When I feel that I'm losing control, I feel the need to reassert my control. And how do I reassert my control? By acting bigger than I actually am, which is expression of anger. When a person cuts you off, what it awakens within the mind is, oh my God, the rules and the regulations of the street are all man-made. Nobody cares. Everything is chaotic. I could be hit here, there, or the other thing. Plus, this person feels he's more important than me. The only thing that I can do in that diminished state of losing control for a second is honk as loud as I can to make myself sound louder than I actually am. So it is specifically the destabilization from faith that leads to frustration, agitation, resentment, which is the opposite of patience. But faith is the aspect of patience, which means that a person is not afraid of anything at all. I don't pay attention to anything that's blocking me, or I don't pay attention to anything that's knocking me off my game. There's two ways that I understand this. First, externally, it means that I'm doing my avodah and someone comes to bother me or an issue comes to bother me, and I push it away and I remain in my avodah, and so nothing bothers me. But the other way that I understand it is that when I'm in my avodah, I'm in my avodah, and when something comes along and bothers me and interrupts me, and there's a mania that arrives, and I have to do the dishes, and I have to go do carpal, and I have to do this, that, or the other thing, it's not a mania or a bilbul, because kacha, this is where Hashem wants me at this moment, and I find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this experience as much as I find him in the Sefer, in my Gan Eden Elyon. And that's what it means, that nothing bothers me, everything is fine, everything is okay. Rak osa esh shelo, a person does his thing, a person continues to do his thing. Osa esh shelo, what's shelo? Shelo is gematria Purim. To do one's thing is the element of Purim. This is the element of patience, of taking a deep breath, literally, inhaling through intensely the nostrils, holding it, and exhaling slowly but surely, learning how to breathe again for the first time. She'ein shum davar yochel lebalbelo, so reality is reality, but nothing can be mebalbel me. Nothing is knocking me. Nothing is dragging me away from my Yishav Hadas. Hoshana nefesh bahala hoshana. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved the neshama from Behilas Hadas. This is my favorite line in the entirety of Likkutei Moharan. He says it twice. For Kilo ichpat le shum davar. I don't care about anything. I don't care about anything. Nothing is important. Only you, Hashem. I don't care. Come and stand in front of me in line, this, that, the other thing, whatever it is. Avada, I care. Avada, Rabbi Nachman understands the need and the gradations of human experience. But besof davar, kol nishma, elokim yireh v'zeh kol adam. In the end, the only thing that a person should actually fear is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sof davar, in the end, after all is said and done, Hakol nishma, when I pay attention to all of the voices and the projections about things I'm afraid of other people, in the end of the day, the only thing that comes out is Es Elokim Yireh v'zeh kol ha'adam. That's the only mitzias of being a mensch, is fear of God. Fear of another thing is already missing the point. The more we drag into our circle with God, the more we begin to have real kavod, which is the shorish of refined yira to our families, the people that we love. Esa likim tirek is ekol adam is es larabos tamidei chachamim and tzaddikim as well. But any other ounce of fear anywhere else is meaningless and wasted. The Baal Shem Tov's father, before he was nifter, said to the Baal Shem Tov one thing: don't be afraid of anything. Do not be afraid of anything. Be afraid only of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And at that place, what opens up is a hargasha of lo ichpatiyut. I don't care. The world is too serious to care. If I care, I've lost my mind already. There's infinite things to care about. If I start caring, I'm done. The only tool is emunah and not caring, because the only thing I care about is maintaining that inherent source of growth and connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Person continues to do their thing. They're with Hashem wherever they are. Because the capacity of patience is not only a bechina, patience is not an aspect of faith. Our capacity towards patience and long-windedness and the ability to be proactive to reality and not be knocked off of our game, starting from a place of absolute frustration and onas koach and having no strength other than to yell as loud as we can, but rather to meet reality than rather have reality hit us in the face. The more faith that I have, the more of a buffer zone I create for myself to be capable of calming down reality so that I have time to make an informed decision. As Viktor Frankl, Zecher Lebracha, said, that between the impulse and the reaction rests the point of free will. The more emuna that I have, I extend the territory of before my reaction, and I have the ability to be patient. I have the ability to be patient and wait to do things from a cool, calm, and collected place. Because what's the rush? I'm not going anywhere. Hashem is right here in front of me. Tachlis is right here. He calls man sheyesh avodah zara ba'olam. As long as there's avodah zara, as long as there's avodah zara in the world, as long as there's the notion of there being something other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my life, as long as we give credence to the experiences of forlornness, as much as we give credence to the moments of connectivity, and the moment that we forget that all moments of distance are ultimately at the service of and rooted fundamentally in the deep knowledge of faith that we know is true, and that we know we don't want to have to wait so long to come to realize it because we want to be mishta ashaya with this. We want to have pleasure in this world with faith. So as long as that idea is concealed, as long as there's avodah zara, charun af ba'olam, there's anger. Because as long as God is concealed from me and I don't see Hashem in my life, in my day-to-day life, the more I feel that the world is just operating in the way that it is, the more likely I am to be frustrated, angry, and resentful because I have no patience with anything, because there's no stability. Aval al yedei emuna, but through that inner place of faith, shu hefech avodah zara. It's the absolute knowledge that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're everywhere, even in avodah zara, you're there. You're everywhere, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like David HaMelech says, David Allah El Rosh, David HaMelech wanted to be Megala, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Avada, that's true, but that's just not the way that we do it. Because the tachlis is to be mavatalid and to come to understand the svara of why an Asherah tree can't be used for a lulav. Why? Why can't I take a lulav from an Asherah tree of Avodah Zarah? Because Chazal say that the lulav needs a shear. It needs to have an actual measurement. It needs to be a real object. The kesuse mechta shira, but the Torah has redefined it and said that it has no shear. Avodah Zarah is nothing. It's not that Hashem is in it. It doesn't exist. Amalek is just there for us to reveal that it doesn't exist. But as long as I'm in that duplicitous place, and I think there's other powers in the world, that other people do things with their own power, or that they're doing it deliberately, then there's anger. But when I come to realize emuna, which is the opposite of avodah zara, nisbatel hacharonaf, so the anger dissipates. V'zoichin la'arichas apayim. And a person merits the capacity to take a deep breath in this world, to take a deep breath, not to be so afraid, not to miss it by trying to protect it, but to be in it. Instead of missing it by ensuring that it's going to last, to be in it and to take the deep breath and to look around and to witness what is taking place. That's Laman Das Kol Amei Haaretz. The person is Amei Haaretz. The person has 70 nations within them at war. But Laman Das Kol Amei Haaretz, the Ikra Tachlis is for a person to come to Das, to a place of being aware of simcha in this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Natata simcha b'libi, you have placed simcha in my heart, in my awareness that I'm alive. Ki erech hapayim mutali b'bechinas emuna. And emuna is the opposite of anger. And through emuna, I merit the ability to take a deep breath. Sheya'arich apo al kol davar bilbul umniya she'oiver alav b'tfilaso ba'avodaso. That I take a deep breath and I calmly address every prevention and moment of confusion and interruption that comes and goes over me in the process of my avodas Hashem. I'm not bothered. I'm not knocked off my game. I'm not unprepared. The trauma doesn't surprise me. I've already made room for it. The table is set for it. The table is set for all of those things that come to take me out of my emunah, and I learn how to dance with them, like Rabbeinu says in Torah Chaf Gimel, in Likkutei Moharan Beis. That I'm not mubulba by these things. I just move forward and I take the next step. I do the next thing. Listen to this lashon, sheyisbol hakol. Sheyisbol hakol, that a person tolerates it all. Meshilach says in Parshas Lech Lecha, that we have the lashon in the Zohar Kadosh of Soivev Kol Almin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu surrounds all worlds, Memalik Kol Almin, he fills all worlds. But what the Meshiloach brings out is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Sovel Kol Almin, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tolerates all worlds. Like we say in Altira Mipachad Pesoim, we have a language that implies that God tolerates reality. And so too, a person has to tolerate reality with patience and faith. That's what tolerating things means. We all know how things should be, and we all know how things are. And in the quiet, calm confidence, humility, and humility of faith that's rooted in truth, a person learns to tolerate the concealment just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu tolerates the concealment. And in that place, we cultivate a patience instead of trying to crush it away or pretend that it's not there. Because most of the time, the reason we're trying to swat away every problem immediately is because we're so terrified if that problem lands for even a second, the whole system's going to fall apart and break. And we're terrified of letting one spot emerge because we're afraid that it will validate all of the low senses of self that we've had about ourselves, when in truth, it's the vulnerability and the capacity to really accept with faith and calmly what reality is. Then I can face everything with calmness. I learn to take a deep breath. I can tolerate things. And I'm not going to become sad. I'm not going to become sad. I'm not going to feel that God is without me. I'm not going to feel that I'm without God. I'm not going to feel that something is lost. I'm not going to feel that something that I had is taken. I didn't have anything to begin with. I had nothing to begin with. The Chayze Milablin says in this week's parsha, the Heilige Chayze, he says that Moshe Rabbeinu was on a darga that he didn't need any preparation to enter into a place of yichud. He didn't need the music played. David HaMelech needed the music. Shaul needed the music. Elisha wanted the music played. The menagain, some external thing to reawaken that spark of joy. But Moshe Rabbeinu didn't need that. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu understood that any moment of being tapped in was also not mine. I'm not myself when I'm on, I'm not myself when I'm off. It's all you, Ribbon Shleilim. The simcha that I experience is only because I'm misameach, that I'm understanding of what's happening, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the show. And a person begins to break free from that sadness that is imposed by the mind, where we feel we're missing something or not doing it right. I'll also take away all of the reasons to not get up and do things, because I'll now have a clarified mind that reminds me that I can start again at every moment that I please. And there's actually nothing blocking me from directly running into the Kodesh HaKadoshim in this moment. Nothing. There's no guardians at the door. There is no door. There is no door. It's the Melech who surrounds the treasure house and is thrown with the imaginary walls. And it's to the degree that we can utilize our imagination to break down those imaginary walls with Amunah, that we'll be able to realize that I can start again at every moment and I'll have no reason to be lazy anymore. A person will hold his breath, will hold it, will inhale, will krechs. Rabbi Nachman identifies the krech, the oy, vey, that moment of vey, where a person is actually extending the air within the lungs for a moment longer than they would with language, is the same thing as taking a deep breath. The good krechs, a good sigh, is the same thing as taking a deep breath and being ma'atzar ruach and allowing time to stop for a second. To stop for a second so that we can actually look around and see what's happening in front of us, and to realize that I don't have to be in such a behila. I don't have to be running around like a chicken without a head, because I never had a head to begin with. I haven't lost anything. Zak the Heilige Rebbe. At this point, the person is able to do what they need to do They're not going to get sad and they're not going to become lazy. Rak ya'atzor rucho, they'll hold themselves velo yichpat leklal, and they won't care whatsoever about what they're feeling at the moment or what their perspective is saying in a negative way, but they'll just connect to the innermost point, even if it feels like absolutely nothing, especially when it feels like absolutely nothing. V'yasa et shalo ba'avodah. So again, shalo, to do his thing, is the gematria of Purim. V'ya'avor ala kol, v'ya'avor ala kol, v'ya'avor ala kol, like the Rebbe Maharash, l'chatchila ariber, to be ma'avir ala kol. Rabbi Nachman in Torah Samach Dalet talks about how Avram Avinu was the Rosh of Klal Yisrael because of his emunah, his capacity to leap beyond the Chalal HaPanui. And his ability to leap beyond the Chalal HaPanui was why we're referred to as the Ivriim. We're Aver Yam. We have the capacity to jump beyond the sea and traverse the ultimate paradox that rests at the heart of everything other than emunah. Emunah is the only thing that carries us over. And that's why it's called V'ya'avor. V'ya'avor. HaKadosh Baruch Hu believes in Klal Yisrael more than what their actions say. And we have to believe in ourselves more than what our actions say. And we have to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu more than what his actions say. And we have to believe in the Metzias Ha'amiti of the Dvarim. But when Rabbi Nachman heard, they told Rabbi Nachman that there was a Yid in Ashkenaz, there was a tzaddik in Ashkenaz, who was the Bal Yesod V'Sharish HaAvodah, that on his deathbed, he said, Ubergesprung, Ubergesprung, I leaped, Avarti et hakol. And Rabbi Nachman was mishabeach that very much. It's like the blind beggar, Avarti et hakol. I wasn't bogged down, l'chatchila ariber. When a person detaches themselves from that sadness that's induced by a deficiency at the heart of their faith, they're able to jump beyond everything. V'lo yachu shal kol bilbulim v'hamanius klal. And they're not going to be bilbulim anymore, and they're not going to be preventions, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the bilbul, and he's in the maniya itself. And the ikr is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, wherever I'm going to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as reality brings me into it, in accordance with my nekudas habachira, I'm going to find him. Shekol zehu b'chinas erech hapayim. This is patience. This is taking a deep breath and realizing that just as a person takes a deep breath when they realize the circumstances that surround them and they realize the responsibility that rests upon them to do what they need to do, b'makom shein ish yamod lios ish, and that deep breath of responsibility that says, okay, I'm actually going to have to do this. I'm actually going to have das. And a person can also take the deep breath with the confidence and the calmness of doing the task that needs to be accomplished, serving Hashem, revealing Hashem, finding a nekuda tova. We get this from emunah, the perpetual growth, the inability of losing, the never not moving upwards process of faith. Which is the secret of growth, the secret of vegetation in its natural growth from the shorish itself. That's what emunah is for a person. Rabbi Nachman is adding a third phrase over here, which is clearly a natural totsa'ah of the first two, and not some new thing. But there's growth, and then there's hatzlacha in avodah, because this is the hatzlacha, the capacity of accepting that which is as the moment of avodah and finding the nekuda toiv in it. That is the hatzlacha, an ish matzliach. That's the secret of natzachti v'anatzeach. I was victorious, and I go down from being victorious, and I'll be victorious again. Because in truth, nothing can knock him down to put him into sadness or laziness, chas v'shalom. To, God forbid, prevent him from missing out on doing what he has to do in this moment. A person should run. A person should run with zrizas and simcha, to be ma'avor, to not let time bog a person down. The sadder one is, the longer time takes. The drudgery of time is that time takes time and it's elongated, and being alive is just an extension of this durational pain. But in truth, in the secret of zrizas and jumping beyond an ubergesprung and lechatchila ariber, and saying one moment at a time and right here, right now, and if not now, then when? Then a person has the ability to do their thing, bezrizas ubesimcha, v'lo yistakala kol bibulim klal. All of this is the element of patience, bechina of emuna, the element of emuna, the bechina of koyach hagoydel v'koyach hatzameach. So zok the Heilige Rebbe. So we're almost there, chavra. Vida, the person has to know she'erech hapayim toli be'eretz Yisrael, and the capacity to cultivate this framework of calmness and patience and faith. It's contingent upon, dependent upon, one and the same as the element of Eretz Yisrael, the Nakud of Eretz Yisrael, a real place. That place that Rabbi Nachman said that before people arrived there, they couldn't believe it was real. When they arrived there, they said there's absolutely no difference between this place and the other place. And only afterwards of spending a moment there, they came to realize, in spite of the fact that it looks like every other place, it's completely different and different in reality entirely. The element of Eretz Yisrael, the belief that things are real, that there's a realness to all of this, that there's a point of connectivity between the infinite and the finite, that we have the capacity of living in and being in a mikvah of das. When a person is in the element of Eretz Yisrael, mamish, or the bechina of Eretz Yisrael, when one is not in mamish, so that's where they have to develop patience. Avada, a person who lives in Eretz Yisrael knows this, right? Person knows this, that you need patience here. If you don't have patience, you're done, you're knocked out. So it's kipshuto mamish, but at the same time, it also means the element of the bechina, that the nekuda of Eretz Yisrael, that point of connectivity, is where I grow in patience. Ki Eretz Yisrael u'bechinas emuna. What is Eretz Yisrael other than the element of emuna? It's the place where we cultivate the ground. It's the place where we do the mitzvos maisios of mitzvos atlios ba'aretz, where we have to engage in the Seder of Zrayim. Like the pasuk says, Shechan aretz ura'ay amuna, that the land is rooted in the emergence of faith. And anyone who lives in Eretz Yisrael, it's as if, it's imagined as if they have a God. So over here, the Emunah is having a God, but also we see that Rabbeinu himself is making a tzushtel between Dimyon and Emunah, as Rabbi Nachman points out in Torah Ches as well. Nimsa she'eretz Yisrael u'bechinas Emunah, the land of Eretz Yisrael, is the notion of Emunah. When a person cultivates that place, that ground upon which they stand firmly, and this is coming out for each and every Yid in reality now, that the ground upon which all things stand, no matter what the source of differences are, is Eretz Yisrael. The irreducible remainder, when everything else falls off the tree, is the Bechina of Eretz Yisrael. However one orients themselves to the Nikud of Eretz Yisrael, every Yid is a Chelik in Eretz Yisrael. And that Chelik of Eretz Yisrael is their Chelik in Malchus, and it's their Chelik in Emunah. And it's the rootedness, it's that thing that is real, that real that cannot be reduced. The ground itself, Afar de Manakula. Eretz Yisrael is the element of Emunah. Eretz Ochles Yoshveh, the Rebbe said on Motzei Shabbos that mamish, to be eaten by the emunah of the land, to let it eat you, to be swallowed up completely by it, not by the yisurin of the land, but the emunah of the land, the knowledge that every step in the Nukud of Eretz Yisrael, no matter what, a person walks all of the steps of the Memtesh Shari Bina throughout their day. Memtesh Sharim of Bina, this, that, this question, that answer, this question, that answer, this emotion, that. The Bechina of Eretz Yisrael is the Bechina of the Shar HaNun that rests at the heart of all of it. That there's an innermost point of Emunah Kol Zos that reveals how every different thing in my life, all of the different parts and feelings and this, that, are all reflective of the singular impulse towards connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one way or the other. All of the pratim are mischaber biyachad, and kol necholam holchem el hayam v'hayam inenu maleh. That's the element of Emunah. Kol adar be'eretz Yisrael, it all gathers together. Shebe'eretz Yisrael u'bechinas Emunah, there's the Shar HaNun in that place. And with Emunah, a person merits the longevity of breath, to take a deep breath, to be calm, to be patient. There's nothing that can knock me down. There's nothing that can block me. Nimtza, it turns out then, she'ikar avodas ish ha'Yisraeli zoichin al yidei Eretz Yisrael, that the main avodah of a person in this world comes about by connection to the element of Eretz Yisrael within themselves, to the Nekuda of Malchus, to the Nekuda of Emunah, to the Nekuda of Tefillah, to the Nekuda of Torah Shabbal Peh, to the Nekuda of Nekeva, to the Nekuda of cultivating the vulnerability of emotional connection and opening up the heart. These are the elements of Eretz Yisrael, and they're all extensions of Eretz Yisrael Mamish, which is Mispashet L'chol Artzios, which the Hispashtus of Eretz Yisrael L'chol Artzios in Chutz La'aretz, Podem Geula, is just so that there's a koyach hamoishech of Eretz Yisrael to drag a person to Eretz Yisrael mamish. In the future, there's going to be an actual expansion of the ha'ara, of the emunah of Eretz Yisrael everywhere. But the ikar nekuda of avoida emerges with this inyan of Eretz Yisrael, which is the inyan of faith, the element of faith, of connectivity, that thing that remains, that irreducible part of the structure that contains everything, the leis lemagar miklum, the chisaron itself, the secret of the levana, the secret of mipnei shemesh yonan shemo, as Rabbi Nachman explains in Torah Aleph, the bechin of erech hapayim, the notion of patience, calmness, bechinas koyach hagoydel v'koyach hatzameach, the rooted source of growth upon which all things stand. Shal yidei zeh zoichen hiskal tzeik ba'avodaso. Earlier, Rabbi Nachman says a person would have hatzlacha ba'avodaso if they do this. Over here, it says that a person would be zoicha lehischazik ba'avodaso. So it seems to be a stira. Elama, the hatzlacha in avoda is the perpetual need to reinforce our strength in avoda. Rabbi Nassan asks about the medrash that says that when we walk into sukkahs with our lulavim in our hands, so it's a sign of victory. We're so confident in victory that we still have our lulavim in our hands. Rabbi Nassan asks a simple question. Holding onto your weapon is a sign of still being at battle and not victory. So why is holding the lulav and the esrog a siman of nitzachon? Zakt Rabbi Nassan that it's the continuity of our strength and the perpetual assault on our yetzer and the movement, that undying process of starting again in every moment, that we still hold our weapons. That's the nitzachon itself. So we can say that when Rabbeinu says, on the one hand, the person will avada be matzliach in their derech through this nekuda amuna, and there over here it says that a person will have chizuk. The chizuk itself is the hatzlacha. To find a moment of strength is the biggest miracle imaginable. It's as big as Matan Torah. It's what Matan Torah is. B'chinas arichas apayim. B'chinas koyach hagoydel v'koyach hatzameach. It's not what Matan Torah was, but it's an element of Matan Torah. Shal yidei zeh zoichem leschalek ba'avodaso ulebli lehistakel al shum moineya uma'akev um'babel. Not to pay attention whatsoever to anything that prevents me or anything that stands in my path to confuse me. That in truth, and Rabbi Nachman is saying the quiet part out loud here, that in truth, it's not only that I don't care about these things, but it's only specifically my encounter with these things which are going to be the place where my real avodah is uncovered. It's specifically within the smallness, the derech to Eretz Yisrael, which Rabbi Nachman says is the derech of katnish to bekatnus, in order to be zoicha to gadlish to begadlus. And what the Rebbe said recently is that be'emes, they're not two separate places. Eretz Yisrael is both gadlish to begadlus and katnish to bekatnus at the very same time. That's a secret of emunah. It can either feel like everything or it feels like nothing, but bein kach ubein kach, it has the same potency. Ve'ikr goydel ha'hishtoikikus v'ha'eslavus sheMoshe Rabbeinu. What was the main desire of Moshe Rabbeinu? That which started with Avram Avinu. That which started with Avram Avinu, the connection of Moshe and Avram. But the ikr godel hishtoikikus v'ha'eslavus sheMoshe Rabbeinu, the essential source of the desire and the burning desire that Moshe Rabbeinu Alev HaShalom had, that he had such a burning desire towards the Nakuda of Eretz Yisrael. It was for this patience. He needed this patience. Again, as Chazal attribute to the chet of Hakas Asela, the element of kas to a certain degree. And Moshe Rabbeinu's kas kaviyachol is all of our kas, because we're all das of Moshe. And it's beroiv chachma mitaken roiv kas, as Rav Tzadok says. The more wisdom we have, the more we learn how to overcome anger. That's the ikar tachlis of chachma, to be mevatel the klipa of Edom and Yishmael. The main tachlis was for this nida of erech hapayim. V'zesha amru rabbeinu zal. And this is what Chazal say on Daf Kuf Yud Aleph in Sanhedrin. Daf Kuf Yud Aleph is the gematria of 111, which is Rosh Tevos Einon Movado. It's the gematria of Aleph. And in Sanhedrin, which is the place of Din itself, and so it's the Gilui of Achdus within Din itself. And so what do we see there? What does Chazal say? V'yimahir Moshe, that Moshe sped up and quickened himself. V'yikoid artza v'yishtachavu. And he bowed down where he was on the ground, and he prostrated himself outwards. Ma'ra'ah, what did he see that caused him to fall onto the ground? Erech hapayim ra'ah. He saw the midah of erech hapayim. He saw patience. He saw a deep breath. Hainu keniz kaleel, like we just said, he saw the midah of emunah. Himachma shara'a b'chinas erech hapayim, because he saw this midah of the capacity to overcome charon af and to be mamtik anger in its source by way of patience and calmness rooted in faith. He saw that it's totally in the b'china of Eretz Yisrael keniz kaleel. Al kain v'yikod arza, and immediately Moshe Rabbeinu, his heart was mukad, the fire in his heart burned towards Eretz Yisrael. Shayalibo boer la Eretz Yisrael, there was a fire that was burning in his heart. The Breslev boer eish haveroto belibi. But over here we see that Moshe Rabbeinu, and bringing Moshe Rabbeinu into Eretz Yisrael and being Mamshech Rabbeinu to Eretz Yisrael, is the element of the heart burning for Eretz Yisrael. Kadei lizkois la'erech hapayim, to be meritorious of what? The ability to take a deep breath. V'zeh she'amru sham. And this is what Chazal said. Chad Amar Emes Ra'ah, one says that Moshe Rabbeinu saw truth, the midah of truth, the chaytem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu threw down to the ground for the sake of creating reality and allowed it to be shattered for the sake of shalom. And Mar Amar Chada. And one says Emes and one says Erech HaPayim. Mar Amar Chada, Umar Amar Chada, V'loi Pligi. And the Klal Gadol is Mar Amar Chada, Umar Amar Chada, which is Mariris, when you have two Mars, it's Maror, where it seems that there's a splitness, but when you come to the place of Chada and Loi Pligi, we come to see the unity and the das of the two opinions. And they're not arguing. The patience that he saw and the truth that he saw are one and the same. Eretz Yisrael hu bechinas emes. The land of Eretz Yisrael is the bechin of emes, the place where all things are true. Where, if I had to summarize what it's been like to be in Eretz Yisrael, b'li ayin ra, for the time that I've been zocheh to be here so far, is that there's no separation between surface and depth. Everything is what it is. It's a place of truth. It is what it is. It tells the truth. K'mevur b'makom acher. Umasik sham begamara, meaning reality shows you to be what it is. It demands what it actually demands of you. And the Gemara ends over there and it says, Shma mina erech hapayim ra, but in the end he saw erech hapayim. Because no matter how halig this level of truth is, and no matter how high it might be, nevertheless, Rabbeinu is showing here clearly that even though it's both say the same thing, nevertheless, the emes is, the ikr of the ikr is arichas hapayim, taking a deep breath, patience, emuna, being mamtikas, overcoming sadness, which is how Rabbi Nachman opened up this Torah, that atzvus is a midah ra'ah ma'od. The tzarech kol adam levakesh me'Hashem yisbarach, and each and every person has to daven and ask from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sheyi eloi kisufin v'ga'aguim le'eretz Yisrael, that a person should have kisufin, desire, and ga'aguim, and an undying yearning towards Eretz Yisrael, v'gam sheyeh ga'aguim l'chol tzadikim le'eretz Yisrael, and that all of the tzadikim should have ga'aguim for Eretz Yisrael. V'hu segula l'hakas v'ha'atzvus. Yearning towards Eretz Yisrael is a segula for overcoming anger and sadness. It's a segula. Yearning towards Eretz Yisrael with all of one's heart for the patience and the faith that is to be found there is a segula. It works to overcome anger and sadness. Kikola koes, everybody who gets angry, anybody who gets angry, all of us, when we get angry, we're no longer in the world of Yichud. We have separated it and now we're in control, and we're gauging reality by the level of the depletion of control that we feel. And Mamela, we've become our own God, as the Heliga Kamarna says, that most people in this life are over the klal of becoming like Paro and conceiving of themselves as their own God, of Liya Oiri. And at that moment, we're in a place of Avodah Zarah, because Kala koes ki'ilu oived Avodah Zarah, because I'm no longer in the territory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The person bothering me now has somehow created a rift in the unity of God, no matter how slight the annoyance might be. Aval Eretz Yisrael, the place of Eretz Yisrael, the Bechinas Emunah, it's the concept, the moment, the Bechina, the element, the shared DNA with faith itself, Bechinas Erech Hapayim, patience. Hepech HaKas, the opposite of anger, which is rooted in a short-temperedness, as opposed to a long-breathedness. V'zeh koydem kriya shema. And this is why before we proclaim our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before we reveal our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, she'amunas hayichud, where we're made on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence above and below. When we say echad, we contain within ourselves the aleph and the ches, the ach, of the unity of Yichud Ilah, and the Daled represents the descent into Malchus and the awareness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be with me, as much in the descent into the Bechina of Yechida Tata, Leich Lecha. The two Leichs are 50, because Shema Yisrael is 25 letters, and Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus L'Vod is 24 now, but it's going to become 25 with a Vav, which is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus L'Vod, as the Bnei Yissaschar points out, and it's the secret of Yifen Ko V'Ko, where Moshe Rabbeinu uncovers the Yichud of the two of them, and he's seeing here and there, that's Leich Lecha, that as the Chayza says, that the element of Moshe Rabbeinu, the element of Avram Avinu entering into conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the element, no, the Zidichover says it in his Bir on the Zohar, in the Atar Tzvi, it's the element of Kriya Shema Shel Shachris and Kriya Shema Shel Arvis. So this is what that Avram Avinu was beginning to reveal. That before Kriya Shema, what do we have to say? Which is the belief in the Yichud, Anu Mevakshim, we ask. We enter into the place of Ga'aguim, of the knowledge of what we need in order to uncover the secret of God's unity. We perceive the Yichud of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the request from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He bring us upright into our land, upright in Das, with a Das of a Kluma Shlema, of a recognition of what Eretz Yisrael Mamish is, not a run to Eretz Yisrael, not to this, that, but to be masig, the Nakuda Pnimis of Eretz Yisrael, which is simply Emunah, Kodesh HaKadoshim. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create within our hearts mitka'agim le'Eretz Yisrael, to create for ourselves a yearning towards Eretz Yisrael, to ask Hashem to place it in our hearts. And this is what brings about emunah, and it's a segula to be mamtik chas and atzvus. And then it brings us to Kriyat Shema, which is emunah. So Be'ezus Hashem, we should be zoiche to daven properly, to remember to daven properly for any idea that comes out of this teaching from Rabbi Nachman Be'ezus Hashem.